My name is Carl Anthony, and I work in the automotive industry in Detroit. Sometimes that work encompasses future vehicle technology, and that's what we talk about here, for the most part anyway. This is AutoVision News Radio. The latest body of research from the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety found that drivers who use ADAS features grow comfortable with the technology over time, but the degree of that comfort could raise potential concerns. In essence, drivers who engaged with common ADAS features begin to lower their overall attention to the driving task as the study went on. This was a September 2023 study from the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, which followed an August 2023 study that examined the life-saving potential of ADAS features in the decades ahead. I'll leave a link to that study in the show notes. Join me now as we recap this latest study from AAA. No guest today, just me in your ear this time around on AutoVision News Radio, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and more.
From ADAS to electrification, this is AutoVision News Radio with Carl Anthony in Detroit, Michigan.
AAA's study examined ADAS use over time and involved 30 participants without any prior vehicle automation experience. The idea was to expose them to Level 2 automation, lower levels of vehicle automation, which requires supervision and then intervention in safety-critical situations. As described by AAA in its summary report, the consequences of these technologies on driver behavior require further observation, especially as real-world testing is less common in research studies. Each participant was driving a vehicle equipped with adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assist, two ubiquitous systems readily available on nearly every late model car today. In a controlled experimental trial, participants drove under manual and automation modes on two sections of highway with varying driving demands. AAA researchers took assessments before, during, and after the drives to gauge behavior and attitudes towards the ADAS features that were used in the study. Dr. William Horrey, Technical Director of the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, provided us with some additional perspective, saying, quote, "This is important because these systems can actively control parts of the driving task, but also call on drivers to monitor the traffic environment and intervene when necessary, something that humans are not good at, as decades of research on vigilance has shown us." Dr. Horrey continued by saying, quote, "In this study, we wanted to see how drivers' interactions, experiences, and perceptions of these systems changed as they gained more experience with them." Among the study's key findings is how drivers do become comfortable with ADAS over time, but interestingly enough, they are less likely to rely on the technologies during high-demand situations. For example, during heavy traffic or in bad weather, drivers in the study were less likely to engage the adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assist features, opting to drive the vehicle themselves. AAA researchers noted that drivers had a higher probability of resuming their usage of the ADAS features when weather conditions were favorable and traffic volumes were lower. As things progressed over the 6 to 8 week period, the number of attention warnings increased, suggesting that as each participant became more familiar with the ADAS features, there was a greater tendency to participate in non-driving or non-monitoring activities. This raises the question we've talked about before of how prepared a driver would or would not be to take back control of the vehicle should the situation call for it. AAA researchers noted that as time went on and as experience with the technology increased, participants were more willing to relinquish control of the car without monitoring the ADAS features as closely, which does explain the more frequent attention warnings. With additional insight to these findings, Dr. Horrey said, quote, "We need to continue to push for better and clearer information about these systems for consumers, especially regarding system functions and limitations." Dr. Horrey continued by saying it's also important to design systems to be easy to use and transparent for drivers so they know exactly what mode the system is in and why it is behaving in a particular manner. The AAA Foundation conducted this study to examine driver workload and attention, along with certain in-vehicle behaviors and perceptions and attitudes regarding ADAS. Now, whether the findings come as surprising or not is likely up to the individual who's reading the study, but it's important either way to frame the results according to a long-term, safety-centric perspective. Dr. Horrey offered this insight, saying, quote, "We should all be mindful that consumers' experiences with new technology will evolve over time, and so we need to conduct and learn from these sorts of longitudinal studies, especially those that examine actual on-road behaviors." Dr. Horrey added, saying, quote, "Knowing that perceptions and behaviors will change, driver monitoring systems may be a valuable inroad to helping curb driver inattention or misuse of systems." Although participants in this study were more likely to use the ADAS features in low-demand environments, the overall sentiment towards the technology was positive. AAA researchers noted in their summary report that each of the participants pointed to lower stress levels and more driving enjoyment. While potentially good news and perhaps a cautiously optimistic sign that ADAS development is headed in the right direction, past AAA research does show a knowledge gap between consumers and the technology. Among AAA's most vital efforts, alongside other respected industry partners, is the continued urging for OEMs to adopt a standard ADAS naming convention. I'll leave links in the show notes that talk more about that. In the meantime, AAA advises consumers to become familiar with their vehicles. Other helpful resources include mycardoeswhat.org, I'll leave a link in the show notes, which is operated by the National Safety Council with support from partners like the University of Iowa. With a final perspective, Dr. Horrey said, quote, "We encourage owners of vehicles equipped with these sorts of technologies to take some time to learn about them, how to operate them, and more importantly, when not to operate them." Dr. Horrey added, saying, "Today's technology is intended to assist drivers, not replace them." I will leave a link in the show notes to the summary report from the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety. The full study was titled "A Multi-Method Approach to Understanding Drivers' Experiences and Behavior Under Partial Vehicle Automation." Reporting in Detroit, Carl Anthony, AutoVision News Radio.